Much. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I feel particularly honored to have been selected by the grad students to come in and speak. I've been very, very impressed with the presentations so far, and the theme of the symposium, transformative research. Um, uh, so today I'm going to be talking a bit about transformative learning to support transformative research and some of the efforts that I've been involved with. This goes right along with honoring Tom Hogemeyer, who, as a professor of practice at University of Nebraska, epitomizes transformative learning being passed on to the next generation of plant breeders. So with that, I'm going to get started. Well, I think I'm going to get started. Let's see here. So we are all in crop improvement, facing the challenge of feeding the world. So of the current world population of 8.2 billion people, more than 10% are chronically undernourished. And undernutrition is particularly widespread in Africa, where the population is actually forecasted to quadruple in this century. And at present, Africa is not feeding itself. About 1 in 5 people in Africa faced hunger in 2021. And you can see from this map that some of the very worst areas impacted by undernutrition are in Africa as well as Southeast Asia. Furthermore, in addition to feeding the world, nourishing children. And why is this important? In much of Africa, 30% of children are affected by stunting. And stunting is just a physical manifestation of insufficient neural tube development. And unfortunately, this condition is irreversible, basically, after age 5. So nutrition starting with conception through age 5 is extremely important to having people realize their full potential. And it has impact for countries as well. Because what's more important to any country than the resource of their human capital? So the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization set up 17 goals called Sustainable Development Goals. And these were created to basically foster transformative change by the year 2030. And you can see these 17 goals, if not so clearly here, just because they're written in small print. The first 3 of them, no poverty, zero hunger, and good health and well-being. According to the recently released 2023 Global Stocktake Report by the UN, we are not on track to reach these goals by 2030. In fact, we have not been achieving any progress with these goals since COVID started in 2020. And here in this slide from the report, it's basically citing the fact that almost 300 million people in Africa likely faced hunger in 2023. And you can see it's basically double other parts of the world. Furthermore, if we remain on this track, it's predicted that by 2030, 53% of the global population facing hunger will be concentrated in Africa, with the results of malnutrition affecting children with stunting under age 5. So we desperately need transformative change. taking a closer look at transformative change and looking at the work of different sociologists in this matter, they would define transformative as characterizing deep and sustained, nonlinear, systemic change in society. And so transformative change can involve technological, cultural, political, economic, social, and environmental processes or systems. And generally, it's the innovative technologies that really push the envelope with transformative changes to society. So my question is, does transformative research actually mean transformative societal change? We're all working toward transformative research, pushing the envelope with genetic frontiers in crop improvement. But sociologists would tell us that technological innovation is sometimes presented as the sole driver, when in fact it's a necessary but not a sufficient element to drive transformative change. So Lanier and Webeck emphasize the need for transformative learning, right? And this is aimed at empowering local actors to be adaptive, in other words, innovative, in transforming the world, incorporating new information and skills with past understanding and perspectives to create a new knowledge base for enduring change. What stands out to me there is incorporating new information and skills with past understanding and perspectives. This is talking about transformative learning for adults. This would mean significance for graduate programs and for continuing education for scientists beyond their PhD. Particularly at risk when technology is the driver. If technology is developed one place and simply transferred to another place, instead of curating innovation to the purpose of a particular outcome for a particular segment of global society, what is at risk is that it's simply technology transfer. It's not actually technology adapted to the new situation another part of the world may be dealing with. So for example, if technologies are strictly developed in the United States, let's just say as an example, and transferred around the world, are they actually enduring? Are they precipitating an enduring change in society when it's simply technology transfer and plug-in, not really adapted to the immediate situation at hand in that geography? This whole question of transformative learning, in my experience, really came to the forefront in the mid-2000s here in the United States. Number one, there was a crisis in terms of the number of plant breeders, particularly looking at, in the US, the number of plant breeders that were nearing retirement age. And so, I mean, some people never retire, right, Tom? But there was the view that there was going to be an acute shortage in a capacity that's essential to the United States. And so the University of Illinois decided to establish the Illinois Plant Breeding Center as a means of raising the visibility of plant breeding as a career choice. I mean, lots of people never heard of the career of plant breeding, myself included, until I started going to college. And the other thing that was driving this was the technological innovations in crop improvement that we were experiencing and that we're talking about here at the conference. So biotechnology and genomics were really driving this quite a bit. And it became ever more evident that continuous education is essential to the rapid and increasing pace of advancements in genetics and genomics. So the Illinois Plant Breeding Center was charged with having a new paradigm in plant breeding education to blaze the trail for the use of new genomic information in crop improvement, including the development of new tools, right? So along with genomics and biotechnology, bioinformatics were also coming along very rapidly. My alma mater, the University of Illinois, tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to join the faculty and establish the Illinois Plant Breeding Center. Up till that time, my career had been in the U.S. seed industry. So I had worked for DeKalb Genetics, basically establishing their molecular marker program, developing software for analysis of molecular markers, and I led a team of IT people to create the informatic infrastructure that was needed and to help train the plant breeders in the company that wanted to learn this new technology and how to use it in how to interpret the results of the analysis programs. I also became involved in bringing the new GM traits in corn that were being developed to market, some of the very first BTs and herbicide tolerant traits in corn in elite varieties. So I was coming to the University of Illinois with very much an industrial mindset. You know, how do you get the improved changes genetically into the marketplace where they can actually have an impact? It was very clear to me that there was a need for multidisciplinary research, if ever there was a need. And so conventional breeding, you know, that had traditionally involved quantitative and population genetics, plant breeding methods, selection theory, statistics, experimental design, knowledge of germplasm, and phenotypic evaluation methods. You know, they had been longstanding and coupled with agronomy and botany in terms of physiology, plant biology, soil science, pathology, entomology. But here now on the scene was more and more molecular biology and biochemistry and genomics and transformation and tissue culture and sequencing and molecular markers and gene cloning. And of course, all of these new data were really demanding a lot more in terms of data management, data analysis, display of the data and the results, as well as engineering. As new phenotypic analysis methods came on board, profiling equipment, analytics in terms of grain composition. We heard a great presentation today on NIR for protein analysis, robotics, nanotechnology, all kinds of sensors, and the use of cameras and data capture methodology in the field. So how do all of these come together and bear on training the next generation of crop improvement scientists? So plant breeding through the transformative learning lens, featuring the industrial process of seed product development for graduate curricula, it needed to reflect the current industrial development pipeline and its various aspects with the integration of the latest proven technologies and advances in genetics, genomics, data management, data analysis, all focused on a clear definition of the product target as defined by the crop value chain players. So, if you look at what's involved in choosing parents, creating the breeding populations, and all of these technologies that are involved in terms of genomic selection, prediction, double haploids to create the progeny that will later be evaluated. Population size versus population number. I mean, we have a finite number of resources to use, right, in the breeding program. And so how do you split those between population size and population number? And then, all the aspects of evaluating those breeding progeny that are developed. And phenomics came on the scene, and the ability to set up specialized testing environments, for example, and other effective screens when you're using indirect selection methods like taking a picture of a crop and translating that to stress tolerance, for example. Lots of mathematics involved in all of this. Then you have trait integration, and these are for value-added traits that might not have been present in the parents that were crossed to create the breeding population. And it was important to keep this separate because, and still is, a lot of these value-added traits are licensed. So what happens if the legal environment changes? If those materials are in all of your germplasm and now your organization loses the license to that particular product, it caused the need for a separate stream for what I call trait integration, and the fact that these traits were being pyramided together, insect resistance of all kinds, above ground, below ground, to various insects with disease resistance, with herbicide tolerance, and other things that enabled inexpensive, efficient practices for farmers to manage their crop. And then supply chain. So maintaining parent lines, hybrid production, QA, QC, and male sterility approaches. So just looking at each of these steps, if you will, in a product pipeline, building efficiency and innovation, plugging in technologies where they make sense and they're efficient and they're cost effective for speed and maximum genetic gain. Not so straightforward, right? It's not so straightforward. So a competency-based graduate level curriculum needs to emphasize complex outcomes of the learning process, knowledge, skills, attitudes to be applied by learners, rather than just focusing on what learners are expected to learn in terms of theory and methodologies, but not necessarily putting it all together and integrating it to achieve particular objectives and outcomes of a crop improvement program. So the learning activities and environments are chosen so that learners can acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, attitudes to situations they'll encounter in everyday life, and then given opportunities to practice these. So I'm sure you're all, graduate students here are all relating to these. These are things that you're experiencing in your program here at Iowa State. And this whole model for transformative learning in science. So building the course portfolio that helps to develop the working knowledge and the skill sets. And then in the US, the apprenticeship model, where graduate students work with an expert in their subject area that landed competitively grant monies to work on a particular problem because the solution that he or she proposed was deemed to be a great one. The student gets a chance to work alongside the expert and to learn how to learn the practices, the best practices to date. I actually, in my program, also learned a great deal from my advisor, John Dudley's technician in how to set up planting for the nursery, for tests. So this apprenticeship model, I think, very, very valuable. And then thirdly, external influences that stimulate a creative mindset, I think really important, so that thinking doesn't get inbred. There's new and vital ideas that are being put on the table. Actually, much as we're experiencing with this symposium today, new and exciting ideas being put on the table. So that inspires innovation and cultivates a problem-solving mindset. So to me, these are the essentials of an important graduate experience resulting in transformative learning. So I had the chance to develop a course in plant breeding. So as the director of the Illinois Plant Breeding Center, I'm promoting a revitalization of our curriculum. And as part of that, I created a course in cultivar development that mirrored my experiences in the seed industry. So I actually spent 4 months full time going through my experiences in the seed industry in these brand new areas. I couldn't go to the library and take out a book or a paper on trade integration and speed to market, or how to best utilize molecular marker information output together with other information that breeders knew through experience with their materials. And I went through what was it in my graduate experience that provided that foundation that I could be innovative and forge a new path that hadn't been there before. And what didn't I get in my graduate education that I wish I had gotten? And attempted to put it together a course that addressed all of these in an effort to share my experiences in industry. When you look at the fact that I was looking at the fact that almost all of the graduate students from the University of Illinois went to work in the seed industry after they graduated. So how best to prepare them for going to industry and being immediately productive? So that experience of putting together that course and teaching it, it was a semester-long course, was very, very valuable. And when the opportunity came up through the USAID Soybean Innovation Lab to now go to another part of the world and to help them establish a curriculum and a graduate program that would be producing individuals that also would be ready to go right into the workforce and immediately be productive in crop improvement in Africa, was a great opportunity and a great challenge. So the University of Ghana, West Africa Center for Crop Improvement, called WACI, asked me to do a curriculum review and they wanted to enhance the graduate curricula, the student experience, and they also had 4 new faculty members, young career scientists. And, just from my own experience, I realized that it would be great to give them some faculty development experience too. 2 of them were coming from more a molecular background, a lab background rather than plant breeding, and WACI was about plant breeding. So I had a chance to lead a group of individuals you see in the upper picture there in the curriculum review. And we identified and made some recommendations identifying critical gaps in the curriculum. For example, there were a number of courses that we proposed be created for the University of Ghana, WACI. And through the Soybean Innovation Lab, I could actually find a topical expert in that area, somebody that I consider to be an expert in that area, very knowledgeable, very savvy, and also a very good instructor. And that person developed course material and then demonstrated its delivery in action one semester at the University of Ghana. And then the next year, the WACI faculty would teach the course. They might add material of their own to the materials that had been developed by the topical expert that we arranged. And they would deliver the course in a very interactive, what we call flipped classroom style. So at the time in Africa, it was very much a lecture style of delivery. And so, this proposition of actually being very interactive and having opportunity to utilize tools, practice with tools, develop skills was pretty new. And so I think the WACI faculty also appreciated the fact that that style of teaching was demonstrated for them. So a couple of courses in statistics, one in population genetics, one in molecular marker analysis, and then phenotyping methods and approaches to key decision points in crop improvement. And we also made possible student internships for WACI students to spend some time during the summer in the US interfacing with the seed industry. So the seed industry in Africa is in its infancy. There aren't very many opportunities for students to interface with the seed industry. And so I think they found this to be very, very informative and kind of opened their minds about what the possibilities are. When they would go to Pioneer and see how the germplasm was handled, labeled. I mean, they were so surprised. They had never seen anything like this before. And so there were many light bulb moments like that where just seeing what could be possible, gave them the opportunity to be more creative in their own right. So in addition, we also invited the young WACI faculty to the African Orphan Crop Consortium's African Plant Breeding Academy, which is a continuing education program for plant breeders, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that. So this expanded further. So not only Illinois to Africa, but Illinois to Ghana, but now it was Illinois and Iowa to Ghana and beyond. And I had the great experience of participating in the PBEA, Plant Breeding E-Learning for Africa program that was being managed here through Iowa State. Walter Sousa and Kendall Lamke were leading this. And it not only involved many of the faculty at ISU, but it involved 3 institutes in Africa. So KNUST, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana, Makerere University in Uganda, and the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. So faculty here, Thomas Luberstadt, Bill Beavis, Asibi, Mahama, Danny Singh, Artie Singh, and Dr. Fay all contributed to producing courses for this portfolio of courses that was developed so to facilitate e-learning. So e-learning anywhere. Faculty in Africa could download the modules and teach them, or they could develop a smaller set of those and use what was online as a textbook for their students. There were multiple options that were available. And I had the opportunity to create the Cultivar Development course, which was 7 modules along with instructor guides. So I wanted the instructors, whoever would be picking this up in Africa to teach their students, to have an idea of different activities that they could do for the flipped classroom, and examples of exams and quizzes and things like that with the answers. I always like the answers myself when I'm being given something like that. And then this portfolio of classes was not only available online, but Dr. Sousa and Dr. Lampke also made these available in ebooks for each of the courses that are open access and downloadable. So as I'm one step further, Iowa State University's professional learning community became involved. And so they took one step further in actually developing the instructor skills for these faculty at the University of Ghana and help them to create instructor guides for the other courses. And so, for example, for molecular breeding, Thomas Luberstadt worked with John Ellablu at WACI to create this instructor guide for the course. And the same thing with quantitative genetics and quantitative methods. Beatrice Athi and Ajaman Dankwa were beneficiaries of those courses. And then now the University of Ghana is offering to mentor other faculty at other African universities and sharing those instructor guides and how they use them. So, you know, it was a great program that lifted up the faculty in Ghana and helped them to lift up other faculty across the continent. So beyond that, going beyond those 3 countries, Ghana, Uganda, and South Africa, I had the chance to be involved in the African Orphan Crops Consortium. So this was an effort started back in 2011, and it was really focused on eradicating malnutrition and ending stunting in Africa. It has a unique model. So first of all, identifying crops about which little plant breeding had been done, and yet these were traditional crops that offered significant complementary nutrition in diets that were anchored on maize, rice, or wheat, very common in Africa. Actually, most diets in Africa are anchored on maize. I was surprised as a maize breeder to find this out. West Africa is very rice oriented, but the rest of the continent, other than very northern Africa, anchors their diet on maize, and it's white corn. So identifying these crops that if some work was done to create improved varieties that yielded more, it would be a tremendous boost to nutrition, and also making nutrition available year-round. One of the really unique things about the model is that immediately genomic resources were being produced for these 101 crops. So these 101 crops were DNA sequenced. And then from there, marker sets can be developed. All kinds of work is enabled with the annotation of those sequences, et cetera. The model also included equipping African scientists that were working in national programs. So NARS stands for these national programs. National Agricultural Research System is the, it's just commonly called NARS. Equipping them with the knowledge, skills, and tools to be able to utilize these genomic resources to develop improved varieties faster and very efficiently. And then finally, empowering multidisciplinary teams to enable fast, effective options in supplying farmers and consumers with the characteristics they want in new varieties. So the AOCC leadership started with Howard Shapiro. He was the innovator, the concept guy with this. He heard a presentation by an assistant professor that had just started at UC Davis, and she was talking about stunting of children in Africa. And Howard Shapiro, being a corn breeder by training, recognized that, this is actually a solvable problem. And as crop improvement scientists, we are problem solvers, right? And so he took it upon himself to start this whole consortium. It started, he engaged Dr. Ibrahim Mayaki, who at the time was the president of the African Union Development Agency. And Dr. Mayaki was able to get all the countries on board in Africa with this plan. And I was engaged to start the African Plant Breeding Academy. So why that? So if DNA sequence information and resources are going to be helpful and actually have an impact on African people, that benefit is going to come through plant breeders, crop improvement scientists, right? So the African Plant Breeding Academy was developed with the theme for more, better, and year-round diets. So here you see an analysis that was done by some of the folks at ICRAF, the World Agroforestry Center that hosts us in Nairobi, Kenya. And you see some of the African orphan crops that were identified as supplying needed vitamins at a particular time of year when otherwise they're missing. Here was mainly A and C. But the Academy basically has a very interactive classroom, guest speakers that come in and demonstrate the concepts that we're teaching in action, share their secrets for success. Our instructors are world-class experts. So you see Bruce Walsh there that literally wrote the book on quantitative genetics. And then the course culminates with students actually taking anything that they saw in the course that could benefit their own breeding program and writing a proposal to put that into action for more efficiency. And so at present, now we have trained 151 national breeders in Africa that are working on 125 different crops, 60 of which are African orphan crops, and they're from 28 countries. About 40% of these people are women, and over 90% are PhDs. We started a course to teach gene editing to produce sources of traits that were difficult to access, but wanted in product targets. They were traits that the stakeholders in the value chain need. And so far, we've trained 32 PhD level biologists in 10 different countries. And these are all countries that have some potential to commercialize a gene edited trait. So this has actually resulted in 183 scientists trained, a Pan-African movement, if you will, and all these scientists determined to crush malnutrition in their communities. Some of the accomplishments to date, so the sequencing is still underway. Most of it's done by our consortium in-kind partner contributions. Alumni have launched 143 new varieties since they have finished the course. Here's one that really astounds me. They've taken their proposals, in many cases that they wrote for the class, and they put them out sometimes collectively, like a group proposal, to different funding agencies. Collectively, these 151 plant breeders have landed over 180 million US dollars of external funding in addition to their national program budgets. And even their national program budgets have been boosted by 3.6 million, 6.3 million. And this represents a 30-to-1 return on investment if you compare the amount of money we spent on education and travel for all of these people to participate in the course. Pretty remarkable. 665 peer-reviewed publications, 62 graduate-level breeding courses using the materials from the African Plant Breeding Academy. Many of these scientists are also teachers at African universities, so they're playing it forward and facilitating transformative learning in their own universities. So lots going on. I'm going to end kind of quickly here. I don't want to run past my time, but the AOCC has grown to 45 organizations, and it's considered to be quite an uncommon collaboration if you look at this group of organizations that include the private sector, the public sector, groups like World Wildlife Fund oftentimes is not so much there with some of the seed companies that support us, like Corteva, Syngenta, and Bayer. So it's a great group, and appreciate the funding that is represented by some of these members. So some give in-kind contributions and some give cash toward the Academy. So we're looking forward to the next 10 years with the AOCC and transformative research, as well as more transformative teaching that will come from the individuals that have participated in the AOCC. Specifically, we're hoping to have 2 more cohorts of the Breeders' Course and the Gene Editing CRISPR course, and to be able to coordinate now this Pan-African movement to focus on specific nutritional problems with specific crops, and to organize those breeders that are working on those crops a little bit. We're also trying to work through the value chains a bit to impact urban as well as rural populations. Right now, we're pretty much focused on small shareholder farmers that are feeding their own families. And FAO, one of our members of the AOCC, is considering the AOCC model to be deployed in other parts of the world, South America and Southeast Asia. So with that, I really thank you for your attention. It was a pleasure to be here, and